We're going walking in the Lake District, but first of all we had to get the camp set up, and just to reach the stage you can see there took us about 5 hours of gathering and erecting and cooking, and I don't think we'll be going camping again in that sense. We're off on the walk, starting with a nice little bridge over a beck, and then I contemplate the route ahead. We're actually walking around what's called the Mosedale Horseshoe, and you can see the route we're going to take across the tops by that red line. We started by ascending a path beside a steep scree slope, and here's Bertie taking a breather at the top of it. And here comes Grandad bringing up the rear. As you can see, the weather was absolutely fantastic for this day in particular. It really doesn't get any better. Perfect sunny conditions and about 70 degrees as well. Glad I was wearing a red t-shirt because that enhances that picture no end. Now we're just about to reach the first of our summits, or a peak as it's called. This is a red pike, not a peak, a pike. Bertie's such a jolly companion on these trips. He enjoys the walking just as much as I do, but is somewhat considerably faster at doing so. There I am at the top of a red pike with a view of Great Gable behind, which we walked on the following day, more of which in a few moments. In fact, Great Gable reminded me of an exorbitant souffle, a bit like the sorts of souffles you did for us on a Sunday afternoon, Mum. Here we are now approaching a peak called Steeple. You can just see it in the middle of the picture, very dramatic peak, and you can ascend it by just doing a quick out and back excursion. Can't quite see people on top of it, but it was a good one to bag. And now we're preparing to ascend another wonderfully named mountain, which is called Pillar. Quite a rocky, narrow, windy little path, as you can see. And from the top we could see into the valley where we'd started our walk. In fact, we actually started just round the right-hand corner of that mountain, so we'd already done a fair distance by this stage. Bertie celebrated the ascent as always by standing on top of the trig point, not a trick that I can achieve these days. And now, the most dramatic part of the walk, we're going to have a look at what's called Pillar Rock, which is round the back of this particular peak. You can't actually climb up that rocky outcrop unless you've got ropes, but we did have a very good look around it from all various angles. And Bertie took this particularly stunning shot from just round the corner. You might just be able to make me out on the right edge of the picture with my rucksack on. A truly spectacular picture, I think the best one he's ever taken. This next picture by me is quite good as well. I'm rather proud of it. Bertie is having a rest here at Robinson's Cairn, which was built to commemorate a walker who fell to his death nearby. By this stage in the day the sun was fairly low in the sky and really enhancing the pictures. We're now on what's called the high level traverse, on our way back to a mountain pass. And yeah, as I say, the conditions couldn't have been better. We're now over the pass and we're making our way back to the valley bottom as the early evening sun nudges over the top of that particular ridge. Now, if you look in the middle of that picture, just below the top of the picture, you can see the scree slope which we walked up earlier in the morning. That gives you an idea of how long and moreover how steep it was. Here's Bertie having a splash stop, demonstrating an interesting technique for cooling himself down and having a drink at the same time in a sort of natural rock basin. Finally, at last, we're on the valley floor and only about 20 minutes here from the end of the journey. Because of all my splash stops and throwing my head back and putting water through my hair, I ended up with a rather spiky hedgehog haircut that only realised I had after we'd been in the pub for 3 hours, which was a bit embarrassing. Right, day 2, we're now off on the second walk, which starts from an old slate mine. Only about 6 miles, but it's still quite arduous. A little bit gloomier, unfortunately, on the second day. You could still see the mountains, but they were all behind a pretty thick haze, unfortunately. But the haze did make this RAF jet stand out all the more clearly when we got to the top of the main peak, which is called Great Gable. And that's a view back into the valley which we'd stayed at the night before. We'd actually driven round the valley to the start point rather than start the walk from there, because it was easier to do it from another place. And on the way back, got this quite nice picture of Bert on a rocky outcrop in one of the slightly clearer spells on our return. And that's the last picture as I walk down an old slate quarry railway line back to the car. 2 grand days out.